Hi viewers, welcome to another exciting episode of The AI People, where we share inspiring stories of thinkers and builders who are humanizing AI. Today we are at the RSA conference, the biggest cybersecurity conference in the world, and excited to be at the Center for Architecture and Design. San Francisco, where the event is held, is also one of the best places in the world when it comes to architecture design. And I have David here from the NCC Group, who is technical director and leads the AI/ML practice at the company. And David, why don't you kick us off with an introduction?
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Vivek. Like you mentioned, I own the AI and ML team at NCC Group, and I have a team of AI penetration testers who have the opportunity to get hands-on with a lot of these systems that integrate AI and ML. And we get the down and dirty aspect of how these systems can go wrong in the wild, and that's what are some of the ways that we can fix them.
Great. And it's the company senior executives and the board that really cares about fundamentally three things: continuity of the business, secondly, how do they grow the business, and thirdly, how do they protect the business. And when it comes to protecting the business, that's where these services really matter. And I would like to get your thoughts on what is top of mind at the board right now. I know on one side they are putting the pedal on the gas to accelerate AI initiatives. On the other hand, they are also equally concerned about security threats.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because I was actually discussing with executives yesterday how the board has this two-coined approach of, on one hand, they're trying to push AI and accelerate it as quickly as they can, but on the other, they're absolutely terrified of the security implications. And so they're trying to come up with strategies for how can we incentivize our teams to innovate and develop on top of these new technologies, while at the same time remaining secure. And so right now, the most mature teams are putting out these governance strategies for, okay, my executives don't understand AI security, but let's identify those stakeholders who do and give them the power and equip them with the authority to be able to set out some guidance plans and governance strategies to say, here's how we're going to be doing AI securely, here are some security reference architectures, and here are our plans for integrating AI into our production applications.
Sure, that's great to hear. And I know architecture is just one piece of the puzzle. It's the design and how do you orchestrate a security program. It's clear that every large organization or every organization of any size has a security program in place, and they have the right sort of leaders and experts within the organization engaging with experts like you to make sure that they get this correctly. Just want to get your thoughts on what differentiated approach you are taking when it comes to getting both the architecture and the design part right when it comes to these AI security programs.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it really hits the nail on the head of why AI is different than traditional security. When it comes to most applications, we have the technology stack ranging all the way from the physical hardware to the components that make up our applications. But AI is really operating on the data layer, which isn't something that our tooling is capable right now of protecting. We don't have the visibility that we need to be able to protect things that are operating on that layer. And so it comes down to, when we are architecting for AI security, we need to not only pay attention to how the different pieces of our systems are connected, but also how do they react to the data moving through their communication channels. Because if our applications are dynamically changing where data can go based off of its semantic content, then we need to be implementing security controls that don't only pay attention to where data is, but also what that data means.
That's great. And when it comes to data, organizations these days are, I believe, taking a walled garden approach. They want to have all data centralized in one place, but within the boundaries of their organization, but they want their teams, their ecosystem to come into the walled garden to access the data to be able to drive business value. So in this particular context, I would like to learn more about how your organization is helping these customers take that walled garden approach while maintaining the integrity of a well-architected, well-designed security infrastructure and program.
So when it comes to better protecting our applications with walled gardens, a lot of it comes down to being able to constrain the blast radius when something goes wrong. Because even with AI agents, right? AIs are agents of the inputs that they receive, whether that be our users or our threat actors. But a lot of these systems will also just go off the rails on their own. We know that our reliability on AI isn't quite where it needs to be. So a big piece of agentic AI security is being able to contain that blast radius when something does go wrong. So the garden aspect, being able to give them the tools and the functionality that they need to be able to perform useful work, but the wall being that when they inevitably do fail, are we able to pick up from where we left off and maintain the state of our application?
That's great. And in taking such an approach, what was the response coming from the senior executives at some of the companies that you've been interacting with, and how has their perspective of a walled garden approach changed after you have infused your perspectives?
To tell you the truth, most of the time the reaction is, that sounds really hard and expensive, and unfortunately it is, right? We're dealing with a new computing paradigm. But the way that I like to describe it is that this isn't a revolution, it's an evolution on technology. And we have fought the same battle with other paradigm shifts, like cloud, blockchain, Internet of Things, you name it, we've gone through this same process. So when it comes to executives, a lot of the time the questions that they're asking is how do we empower our teams to be able to make wise decisions with the tools that they have when the industry hasn't standardized around particular approaches or solutions that solve these problems for them.
That's great to know. And it seems to me that it's both a science and an art. And a lot of technology solutions and platforms, and at RSA I see a lot of vendors already offering the technical solution. But the art side of things is how do you configure it given the client's environment. Every client has their own walled garden and their own hunters and gatherers when it comes to agentic AI. So you need to systematize this for your particular customer, and that's where the art side of AI and security comes into the picture. So I would like to get your thoughts on how you're striking a balance between both science and art when it comes to AI security programs.
So one of the most common questions we get is, what vendor out there solves all of our problems in one go? And of course we know the answer is that none of them are going to fix all of our issues. And that really is where the artistic approach comes in, because we need action makers, movers within our organizations who are capable of understanding what our infrastructure looks like, how AI impacts our attack surface, and then how we can integrate security controls in the way of doing things that our business already understands, right? In the same way, there's no single identity solution for existing applications. There's no one solution when it comes to AI. So the science aspect being, we understand to some degree how data architectures and application design impacts the reliability of our AI systems. But the art comes in when it comes to integrating that into what we already have.
That's great to know. And you guys are the artists, so you have seen several client environments, engaging with customers, you understand what their challenges are. So how do you see the landscape evolving? And right now we also have AI tools that can also provide some expertise, some subject matter. But how are you guys setting yourself apart, and in terms of more like what differentiated capabilities that you are bringing to your sort of customers?
Yeah, great question. And when it comes to AI red teaming, just industry-wide, I think that we have a huge shortage and a lack of testers who really understand the nuances of AI and ML security. So a lot of testers, when you ask them to do an AI red team, they're going to ask your AI for instructions on how to build a bomb, write that up as a finding and say, hey, add a better system prompt. We think that that's insufficient because pretty much every AI can be manipulated to say whatever you want. And it really comes down to what are the assets in your system that real threat actors would want to compromise. If I'm attacking your AI, I don't care what it says, but I do care if it has access to your employee passwords or your Azure Storage secret vault, and I can leverage that as a pivot point to deeper access into your application infrastructure. And so understanding those critical attack vectors is really what sets us apart, along with remediation steps on how to fix it.
So David, I know we talked about the walled garden approach, where the organizations today are more open to engaging with their ecosystem, exposing their data through APIs or some other form factor. But you also have parts of the organization where some of the mission critical data are supposed to be closely guarded in a vault, and the organizations don't want anyone to access the data. So in such a context, how is agentic AI or generative AI, any technology advancement of today, creating new attack surfaces, new challenges for the organization when it comes to protecting these data assets?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges that businesses face is that AI inherently becomes more powerful the more data it has access to. So they're incentivized to throw all of their most critical assets into a data lake and let AI pick and choose what it wants. But the problem is, like you noted, we do have crown jewels of our organizations that we want to keep in a vault. And so when it comes to understanding our assets, one of the strongest techniques that we can have is making sure that we've appropriately labeled the data that we intend for AI systems and agents to have access to, and what needs to be completely sealed off from their capabilities. And a lot of the time, this comes down to understanding identity. Who is the agent acting on behalf of? What user represents their identity? And then what threat actors have been able to interact with that agent, potentially manipulating its behavior?
That's awesome. And what are some of, if you can, share a customer scenario where you have been very successful in terms of helping them ramp up their security program and stay on top of some of the AI challenges, imperatives, and they are the organizations that are riding the wave versus getting impacted by the tsunami of AI.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenarios is that an organization is really pushing for fast iteration of AI. So they gave their developers access to what they consider to be a sandboxed agentic AI solution. And this AI could execute code for them, it could read their files, interact with interesting information. And eventually we found that the sandbox wasn't really a sandbox at all. So all of these AI systems were interacting in the exact same environment, an environment where they had access to all the developers' files. Not only that, but also the cloud environment itself. So their Azure Storage Secrets Vault, their cluster managers, all of these other critical assets were at risk because they exposed these untrustworthy agents to the crown jewels of their systems. So it comes down not only to protecting AI systems from threat actor controlled inputs, but also sandboxing them appropriately according to least privilege so that they can't interact with resources beyond their permission scope.
That's great. And thank you, Dave. You shared so many perspectives. For anyone who is attending RSA or anyone interested in the latest trends in cybersecurity, what would you say are some of the key cornerstone ideas or trends that they should be following for 2026?
Yeah, well, I always say that 2025 was the year of agents. 2026 is the year of interactions. As we have platforms like OpenClaw and all of its derivations opening up, we're seeing that people are connecting agents to more systems and more data, which exponentially increases our attack surface. So I really think we need to be on the lookout for frameworks that not only give agentic capabilities, but also agentic isolation to reduce the blast radius when something goes wrong.
Well, thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure talking to you and getting to know more about cybersecurity, some of the challenges that real customers are facing, and how AI is further complicating things, and how you, with a prescriptive, principled approach, with the right sort of frameworks, you can help some of these, customers survive and also thrive in the age of agentic AI. And I also want to thank Lauren for getting us together today, and I wish NCC Group a great showing at RSA conference.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me.